Welcome to EWA's FINLYT podcast. EWA is a fee-only RIA based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We hope all listeners of this podcast will benefit as we deep dive into complex financial topics that we will make simplified for you. And we hope that this really serves as a catalyst so that you can make the best financial planning decisions for your family and also save time. All right, welcome everybody. Here joined by Chris and Jamison. We're talking about lessons learned. We've just done a brainstorm and recap. We counted up. We've done over 50,000 client meetings over the last. I've been in the financial advisory career for over 15 years. Chris and Jamison, 5 or 6 years, and then we got the veteran Jimmy. He's been over 30 years. So a lot of meetings, a lot of perspective. We thought it'd be helpful to summarize. Hey, what are some of the top lessons learned? I think people learn from people, and you can find, success leaves clues, and we can also try to avoid mistakes that other people have made as well. So, Jamison, why don't you start us off? What would you say? What's one of the biggest lessons we learned after working with all these physicians, executives, retirees, business owners?
I would say the difference between being rich and being wealthy. Like most people, the people that look like they have the most money probably don't, and the people that don't look like they have the most money probably do have the most money.
Yes, I would, just to define that, I think being rich is keeping up with the Joneses. You have a lot of cool stuff to try to impress, your friends. And typically we found in those kind of scenarios, you're trying to impress people that really aren't even your friends. I mean, that kind of lifestyle is not, it's a constant reset. If you have to do more, you're constantly moving the barrier. And then being wealthy is hidden. Like it's your brokerage account. It's your 401k. It's, hopefully money that other people can't see, unless you're really drastically oversharing with your numbers with neighbors, which we wouldn't recommend. So, I think that's huge. And that's been a big mindset shift. And it's been really surprising, some of the, I would say on average, probably someone that retires that comes to us, I would say between 2 to 4 million of liquid net worth, like not including their real estate. And a lot of those people that have created that, had jobs that were paying between 150 to 250,000. And then we sit down with people all the time making over $500,000 that are retiring. And we find that they're on the lower end of that because it's almost like they have the expectation with the higher income to have this certain kind of like lifestyle or the certain kind of like aura they give out. And that just crushes wealth when they're constantly having to buy the expensive cars, the big house, etc. So big income doesn't mean big wealth at all. There's no correlation. It ultimately comes down to what you save. So that's a big one. Chris, anything to add to that?
No, you had a good quote, right? What was it? It's not what you make, it's what you keep. I think it kind of goes right hand in hand with that. So
yeah, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. So, you can have a high income and spend it all, or you can have a lower income and save more than the person with the higher income.
Perfect. That's a big one to start off. Chris, what do you think? Number 2.
I think a good one is like valuing process over product. So like having a plan instead of a portfolio. And that just kind of makes sure that like the plan should be centered around your goals and your values to make sure that it's individualized to yourself. Like anybody can throw a stock portfolio together, but making sure that you have something that's tailored to you, your family, again, your goals, I think is most important. And I think a lot of people get hung up in just, the numbers of things and, does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think there's so much distraction in today's economy with social media. People average 4 to 5 hours scrolling through, doom scrolling every day. And so there's always new ideas. A lot of times we'll get new ideas like thrown to us off of like a TikTok video or whatever. But the having a plan that keeps you steady, keeps you, on track and not distracted can be huge. We've evaluated a lot of clients will come to us and we look at, all the money they put into like these off the wall kind of not private equity, but private investments, kind of like family and friends have pitched them along the way. And the last 3 I analyzed, if they had just put the money, all of the money they invested over over their lifetime, if they just kept it in a diversified portfolio that averaged 7%, their net worth would have been triple on the minimum, if not one was way bigger than it would have been. So just following that process, if you follow products, like you said, it's easy to get distracted. Suddenly your life's dependent on what the product does or doesn't do versus having your money support your life by design. The only way to do that is to have that process in place. I completely agree. So that would lead us to number 3. I think that to have the wealth mindset over the rich mindset, to have that process mindset over the product mindset, you have to have a values-driven plan. So, Chris, to walk us through what that means and how we figure that out.
Yeah, one thing we do with a lot of the people we work with called the values exercise. So, I think you gave us these cards. They have, I don't know, there's probably like 100 of them, and they'll have different values on them, like family or I don't know, what are some other examples? Health, yeah.
Independence, autonomy.
Yeah. And so first
Charity.
we lay them out, and it's kind of overwhelming at first. So we lay them all out, and we tell them start with 10, then narrow it down to 5. And they're not really supposed to be in order of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. It's just what, like, collectively these are most important to you. And then we rank them on a scale of 1 to 10, like how fulfilled is that in your current day-to-day life? Say it's a 6 out of 10, and if it's a 6, like what would it take to get it to 10? And it just sparks a lot of good, thoughtful conversation around those things that go further than just, returns, the numbers, and helps us understand why, the why behind what they want to do. And
it leads to a lot of behavior, because if you don't have that figured out, a distracted mind, accomplishes nothing. So
Yeah.
I think when everything's important, nothing's important. So you got to have like a vital few things that are important, and let your money just support that.
Yeah.
And without that clear design, it's really hard. You can get distracted every day with what the market's doing or whatever's happening in the economy.
I think it's helpful for us too, because sometimes you'll hear somebody say one thing and it's completely misaligned with what they just said during that values exercise, and it's kind of can gently remind them and say like, hey, you just said that this is important, but you want to throw your money at this, and it just doesn't make sense.
Here's a good one. I've seen this a lot. It's people that have more money than they'll ever spend, and they're financially independent, so they don't have to work, and they're working, and they're not healthy, and their top value is health. It's like, stop working, spend your money, and get healthy.
Yeah.
Like, we see that all the time, just totally misaligned.
Yeah. And it's tough, because once you learn habits, it's really hard to unwind those. So I would say the next one would be kind of the paradox that we found, like the best savers are the worst spenders. So you spend your whole life kind of accumulating wealth, making all these sacrifices, working 60, 70, 8-hour weeks. You accumulate this big net worth. And to get that successful, you know a lot of your purposes in your career, if you're a physician, and to give that up suddenly, now we have a couple things. One, you retire, you're giving up a lot of your identity. And then 2, the habit of saving is a hard one to break. It can kind of become a part of your financial identity in a way of seeing those accounts grow. Then you stop working, you stop saving, and now you have to break that habit and then create a new habit that seems the opposite of starting to spend the money. That's why we say a lot of wealth's going to pass, from generation to generation over the next 20 or 30 years, is literally the concept of the worst, the best savers are the worst spenders. So one of the lessons learned is it takes a lot of work, a lot of conversation, a lot of intentionality to really flip that script. So if someone that has accumulated 2, 5, 10, 20 million plus dollars, how do you give yourself permission to spend that? How do you make the realization that if it's for my kids? Well, that's great. Well, if you want what's best for your kids, pass on your values, not necessarily the money. So or hopefully you can do both. But giving yourself permission to spend, it seems simplified if you're young. If you're old, you obviously can, not old, but if you're in your retirement stage, I'm sure you can relate. But this one's a really tough one, and a lot of financial advisors are incentivized for you just to keep the money invested. So we're really intentional about making sure you have no regrets and you give yourself permission. But any other thoughts on that one?
No, I've told people, like, both under accumulating and over accumulating, or I wouldn't say they're equally failures in planning. Like, I'd rather over accumulate than under, but I don't know, if you're sitting on all this money and you're not going to spend it, it kind of represents in a way wasted time, because to earn that money, you're away from your family, or, you're at work doing stuff like pulling you in other directions. So it's kind of like, did you really need to spend that time when you were in your 40s, 50s, whenever it was that you accumulated that? Or did you, do you really even need it? So
I think that's the most important. If you say, what's a good financial plan? It's that. I mean, it's hitting the sweet spot between under saving and over saving, essentially, like hitting that down the middle where you've got that sweet spot. You're spending time presently today, maximizing your life, but you're also securing the future. I mean, most people are drastically on one side of the spectrum, and it's hard to calibrate that back to the middle. So I would say that's our number one job here at EWA. Find that balance. So, with Jamison, let's talk about the money temperature. I know this is something we talk about a lot. You work with a lot of surgeons, high RVU physicians that they come out of residency or fellowship, and they go from making 50 to 70,000 to sometimes over $1 million. So this concept called the money temperature, I think, is a huge one. And talk about the difference between when we're guiding someone before the money jumps, and then when someone comes to us like 20 years into their career, wondering why they're so behind, and like they're making $1 million plus, but nothing's really getting saved.
Yeah, I think before, we'll stick with the doctor example. Doctors have to go through undergrad, med school, residency, probably fellowship, and they're in their mid to late 30s by the time they're making money. So from 25 to 35, they're making $50,000 to $70,000 a year a lot of times, depending on the specialty. And at that point, it's really important that they feel behind. Their peers are get out of college, are making money, and they want to immediately buy the house, buy the car. And I think that when you're in that setting around, you're a resident or a fellow, and you're around a bunch of attending physicians that already have the car and the house, they're later in their career, your brain's kind of wired to fit in with the tribe and, get other people to like you. So it's really easy. You get that first paycheck, you want to start spending a lot of money. So, we do a lot of work with how do we put these fail safes in place, just making sure you don't overspend on the house, overspend on the car, and be able to do those things while still saving for long-term goals. Because it's really easy. You go from making, $50,000 a year would be what? Let's say $3,000 a month after taxes to $30,000 or $50,000 a month after taxes. And it seems like that's a huge jump. I'll never be able to spend that, but we see people spend it pretty quickly. So
yeah, it's like a temperature gauge in the room. By the way, it's hot in here.
Yeah.
You guys have these hoodies and quarter zips on. I mean, it's June.
I'm just trying to protect from the UV.
Yeah. But I think one of the worst things.
I just learned about how bad, I feel I get made, this is a dumb thing, but I just learned about how bad the sun is for your skin.
But what about the vitamin D?
In doses, yeah, it's good.
Okay.
But people go out,
lessons learned from
people go out and just like fry their skin.
Yeah, I'm burnt.
And it's like, that's terrible. Look up, if you Google what does being tan mean for your skin, it's like not it's not a positive reaction.
Yeah.
Anyways,
back to what were we talking about?
I was going to say, I think all of us have seen it. You go to meet with somebody and they're like, just give me like a year or two and we'll get back together. Yeah, and then you go through the budget and everything's gone already and there's no room for anything. And it's like you have the big mortgage, the car, like you said, country club, like whatever it is, and there's no room for savings.
And we see a lot, if you don't get that right, you're in your 50s and you've been making $1 million a year for 10, 15 years and you only have $1 million saved.
Here's the reality, and this is like, I think this is really important as financial planners to do a better job understanding this, is it's really like when you are getting perceived happiness from purchasing cool stuff or like getting a house or getting like a upgrade to your house, when you have a high income, you can get the reward so quickly that your dopamine levels go up. And then to get that experience again, you have to do something more. So that's why we see people do these crazy renovations. And the next thing you know, before saving, like, oh, we'll save money. Then they're doing other stuff versus like, if you have a financial plan that's like so disciplined, the reward in your brain becomes the journey. It becomes the experience. It becomes the hard work. And that's why people that earn their money, save it, keep it, and people that inherit it don't keep it because like it's that rush, and you have to experience that rush. You have to create something new. Then a lot of times it's unhealthy and it leads to addiction. So, I think from a financial planning standpoint, not to play psychologist, it just like this is such an important concept is to realize have the financial plan lead the way, and that's going to be guardrails of it. Just pretty simple. Like don't buy a house more than 2 times your gross income or 30% of your net. You do that. You pay off your debt in 10 years, you max out retirement plans, you save at least 25% of your income, but people don't do that because the money just controls you.
Yeah, wealth is a new thing to humans if you really think about it. It's only been like a couple hundred, no, seriously, it's only been like a couple, maybe 150, 200 years. And before that, we were like, we were more farming, hunter gathering, sharing everything. Yeah. There was no way to store wealth. There wasn't a stock market. There wasn't an investment account. So back, if we rewind, our brains were wired not to accumulate wealth, but how do we like share and get our tribe to like us, right? And so now we've learned how to accumulate wealth, and our brains haven't caught up to do that yet. So we're still. While you're growing wealth, our brains are still wired to get the quick dopamine and get everybody to like you and buy nice things and have the nice car.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful because like you go back to that tribal instinct. It's like now, like I heard a quote like money represents, unfortunately, like love and relevance in today's society. And like most people, no, it's pretty true. The more money you have, it's like the more stature, relevance you have, unfortunately. And then obviously, you ask any. As speaking from a male perspective, you ask any female that's looking for a mate, it's like they want someone that's successful, not like vaping in their parents' basement.
It's true.
Which was Chris last year. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Yeah, so I think it's really important, but the money temperature also, because not only could that be, dramatically different for how your success is, it also is your kids are learning from you every day as well. So if you're, spending all this money, focus on being rich instead of wealthy, it's going to be really hard for your kids to, their levels are going to, start off here. And if you really want them to, hit it on their own and go through adversity, and the best thing you can pass on is just their ability to, to create value in the world and be good citizens. You don't do that by just handing it off the easy key, because then they'll go back in the same cycle of to experience the next, dopamine. They have to get something more, and that's going to be hard to do if they don't have the skill set that they've learned by themselves to do that. So, yeah, it's kind of a catch-22. But I would say the solution to the money temperature is you have to control it before it controls you, and we do this through reverse budgeting. It's really simple. If you're bringing home $50 a month, like predetermine. Don't just put it all in one account and say, oh, the mortgage is paid, this is paid, this is paid. Everything else is going to go on a credit card if you do that. But if you say, hey, 20 a month is going to go. Remember back in the days, somehow we lived off of $3,000 a month during residency or fellowship. We don't have to adjust to spending $50 a month. Let's take 20 of that, put it in a separate account. We never see it, never touch it. That funds the 529s, it funds the back to Roths, it funds the brokerage account, it funds everything. Let's limit our lifestyle off of 30. Crazy idea, I know, but really easy. And our clients that, we work with through that transition, they're probably like, honestly, 10 times on track than most physicians, I would say, at like minimum. Just because of that simple concept and that discipline and that accountability and these conversations and intentionality, because you don't talk about this in your brain. What you put your attention to really expands. And that's why I think, the quote of like most people spend more time planning vacation than they do their finances. Just having a financial planner, it's not about index returns or beating the market. It's about, the intentionality of the plan and making sure you don't get distracted and making sure you're making good decisions and have no regret, no decision fatigue. So, okay. Anything else to add there before we go to the next one?
No.
I would say next one's about simplicity versus complexity. So what do you guys think about that?
I think it sounds cool to have this complex balance sheet of like all these businesses and private investments and things. But at the end of the day, because like, a lot of, let's talk about private investments. A lot of it almost becomes like a status thing of like, oh, my friends are getting in this. We have access to these private investments I want to get into. And so that's actually the more complex the balance sheet, generally, the more unhappy the person is, the more stressful the person is, because there's just so much stuff to track and try to figure out versus something that's just simple. I love this quote, actually. I think I'm probably going to butcher it. Like, the wealthiest people try to make things the simplest versus like vice versa. You try to make things complicated to accumulate wealth, but like the very, very top of the wealthiest people are trying to just do the simplest things to get the highest returns.
Yeah, no question.
The quote said it better than that, but that was the gist of it.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think simplicity is everything because it's easier to pay attention. When things become too complex, it's easy to just procrastinate and say, oh, we'll deal with that later. It's too complex. We don't want to deal with, that strategy because it's just too much on my brain. But if you have obviously, like, we do very complex planning, but our job is to make it simple for the clients from a tax perspective, from a wealth perspective, and make sure you're making good decisions as well. If you're taking those the complexity, you got to limit it at 10% of your net worth, in our opinion. If you're in the, we'll say the under $50 million range of net worth, I'd say you got to keep that kind of stuff under 10% of your net worth.
Yeah.
So,
I feel like usually if you can't explain it to like, if you couldn't explain it to somebody
child.
like a 5-year-old, maybe that's too young, but
A golden retriever.
yeah, then it's usually there's something going on that might not be, usually
Might not be
simple
right.
is good.
Yeah.
So,
I agree. Okay. Behavioral finance. How important is this one, guys?
Very important.
I think, really important. I think most people don't have money problems. There's usually some sort of mindset problem there.
Yeah.
Like whether it's like you guys were just talking about, if you're in the kitchen at hospital or whatever it is, and like you just kind of want to keep up with everybody. Like that's kind of like a behavioral thing versus it's not really like a money problem. Like the money's there, but it's a spending habit or like wanting to keep up with everybody else. So that can drive a lot of mistakes and kind of compound that snowball effect.
Yeah, I think you can give the most bulletproof financial plan to somebody, but it ultimately comes down to their day-to-day decisions on what they're swiping their card on.
For sure. And what decisions they make when the market goes down or up, or staying disciplined, for sure. Okay, well, I think the last one's about time. I think time's the ultimate currency. Everyone every day is trading time for money or money for time. If you're accumulating money, a high skill set like a physician, you're trading your time for money. If you're financially independent, somehow you're probably delegating, you're turning your money for time. Now, I think why this one's important is a lot of the more wealth you create, sometimes I think a lot of successful people have very difficult time doing nothing, very difficult. And so, because what created their success is action, and it's back to that dopamine. And so that's why we see a lot of people say, I need to buy this house, this vacation house, and this, and they just keep moving and moving and moving. So if that's the case, figuring that out, like if you're going to spend your whole life trading money for time, your time for money, and then you don't know how to do the reverse, what was the point of that? So if you accumulate this 10 million plus net worth and you don't know how to reverse that, and what was the point of it? So I think having to be able to answer, what would you do if I stopped working? Most people can't answer that, especially most successful people can't answer that. They can't fill 24 hours a day with intentionality. And I think the other aspect of that is, making sure that you're not only able to answer that, but you're able to do the journey without regret. So you're able to really balance, let's maximize life today. Like let's trade time for money because we got to accumulate financial security, but let's not do that so much that we have all these regrets, because we found when someone does that so much, they can't unlearn that habit. They're going to keep working until they die. They're going to die the richest person in the graveyard. So doing the opposite, again, you're never going to create financial security for yourself. So being able to find the balance of how you trade time for money or money for time, and how you dial the switch back when life changes or health changes, your family needs you, or ebbs and flows of life occur. We see this every day with our clients in their decision making, and be able to navigate that properly is, I would say, is the make or break of whether you're not like how wealthy you get. I don't define that as a successful financial plan. I would say a successful financial plan is your money supporting your life by design as you see fit, and do you have minimal regret? So what do you guys think? Anything to the chip in on the time is the ultimate currency conversation? Any tips for how to delegate or how to manage that if you're a successful individual?
Yeah, no, I think it comes back to like what I was saying before. Like if you have all this money and you're not like you don't need it, I think it truly does represent time that you wasted and kind of like flawed decision making, like that you did at some point in your career. So it's like you could have been doing other stuff instead of like tacking another million onto your portfolio. That's kind of my view on it. But
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think the goal is like get to 100% to where you're trading. You've had so much money, you're trading for time. Because then it's like, I was just talking to a buddy who has a very successful business, and he's like, I'm thinking about selling, so I spend more time. And I was like, his kids are really young, so I was like, well, what's the example for your kids if they don't see you working? And it kind of like a light switched in both of our heads. Like, it's not about getting there is not going to solve anything. It's how the journey is what matters, and the journey after is what matters. But that's another consideration is the goal really to get so much money where you can just buy all your time back? No, I don't think so, because work is fundamentally good. You're adding value for other people, hopefully, in what you do. So it's how you balance the two. It's that ebb and flow. It's that paradox you have to navigate. And I think there's certain volume levels you can turn on throughout stages of life, but you never want to. There should never be a 0 on one and a 10 on the other. It
Harmonize.
It should be in harmony.
Yeah.
And you may be in different. That's a good analogy. Different
I learned,
octaves or whatever.
I just heard this. Balance is just replace balance with harmony.
Yeah.
Why would you want to put things that you like up against each other?
Yeah.
Harmonize.
So that could be a 1 and a 9 if you're really young. That could be a 9 and a 1 if you're really. But you need both of those levers, because one's going to come with some purpose, your example setting, you're adding value. Then one's going to obviously give you more presence and more time with family, etc. But how's your relationship with that? How do you expect that to change over time? I think that's a really good thought exercise. So, all right, many other lessons learned, but those were some of our top ones from working with some of the very amazing clients that we have, and in high skill set professions, a lot of retirees as well. So happy to share these perspectives, and if you're a new listener, happy to walk you through some of these paradoxes and develop a financial plan for you as well. But thanks for joining. We'll catch you next week. Thanks for tuning in to our podcast. Hopefully you found this helpful. Really hope this is as beneficial and impactful to as many people across the nation as possible. So hit the follow button. Make sure to rate the podcast, and please share with any friends or family members that would also find this beneficial. Thank you very much.